Question number 1. In line 3, although most directly means what? Let's look at the surrounding text. We'd rather have the iceberg than the ship, although it meant the end of travel, although it stood stock still like cloudy rock and all of the sea were moving marble. Notice that there are two althoughs in a row here. We'd rather have the iceberg than the ship, although it meant the end of travel, although it stood stock still. The first although gives us a hint to the meaning of the one in line 3. The best way to find the answer to this type of question is to plug in each of the answer choices in turn to see what fits best. And if we do that here, we see that even if makes the most sense. We'd rather have the iceberg than the ship, even if it meant the end of travel, even if it stood stock still like cloudy rock and all the sea were moving marble. So the correct answer here is A, even if. Question number 2, in context, it, in line 11, suggests which of the following. Let's look at the whole sentence to get the context. O solemn floating field, are you aware an iceberg takes repose with you, and when it wakes may pasture on your snows? So the it's referring back to the iceberg, and the speaker is asking the solemn floating field if it's aware that the iceberg is taking repose or resting, and that when it wakes, it may pasture on the snows of the floating field. Pasture, used as a verb like this, refers to an animal grazing in a field, so the best answer we have is D, an animal. The iceberg is being compared to an animal sleeping in a field, and when it wakes, it will feed or pasture on the snows. So the correct answer is D. Question number 3. The brief sentence in line 13 emphasizes the what. Let's look back at the line in context. This is the scene a sailor would give his eyes for. The ship's ignored. The iceberg rises and sinks again, its glassy pinnacles correct elliptics in the sky. So in the line before, we see that this is a scene that a sailor would give his eyes for. Eyes are pretty important, so this iceberg is something that the sailors would give a lot to see. And then the sentence in question, the ship's ignored. And then we go back to talking about the iceberg. It rises and sinks again, its glassy pinnacles correct elliptics in the sky. Based on this context, A, iceberg's ability to command attention, is the best answer. The crew of the ship are caught up watching the iceberg and ignoring the ship. But let's take a quick look at the other answers. Fatalistic attitudes of the ship's crew. This answer suggests that the ship is ignored because the crew is fatalistic or believe that everything is in the hands of fate. But as we've seen, this doesn't match the context. There's no indication that they're ignoring the ship because they're fatalistic. They're just captivated by the iceberg. So B is incorrect. C, a sailor's avoidance of life's adversity. Again, this doesn't fit the context. The sailors aren't ignoring the ship because they're avoiding anything. Their attention has just been captured by something else. Cross out C. D, the iceberg's resemblance to human aloofness. This is stretching a comparison with the sailors ignoring the ship because they're aloof and comparing that to the iceberg. This is convoluted and doesn't fit the context. E, immobility of the ship in frigid waters. This doesn't fit at all. The ship being ignored doesn't have anything to do with its immobility or the temperature of the water. It's definitely not this answer. And the best answer is still A, the iceberg's ability to command attention. Question number 4. The shifting stage in line 22 most directly refers to the what? So let's take a look at the context. This is a scene where he who treads the boards is artlessly rhetorical. The curtain is light enough to rise on finest ropes that airy twists of snow provide. The widths of these white peaks spar with the sun. Its weight the iceberg dares upon a shifting stage and stands and stares. So we have a metaphorical imagery here. The iceberg is daring its weight, the iceberg's own weight, upon a shifting stage. The syntax or word order might throw you off and make you think for a minute that the its refers back to sun, but that doesn't really make sense, so look more closely at the sentence. Its weight the iceberg dares can also be read, the iceberg dares its weight. So the iceberg is on a stage, metaphorically speaking. If you were looking out at the iceberg from a ship, the stage an iceberg would appear to be on would be which of the following? That's really what we want to know. So let's look at the answers. A concealed part of the iceberg? No, this doesn't make sense. The speaker is describing the scene and wouldn't be describing something unseen. And also, the iceberg wouldn't appear to be daring its weight on part of itself. A won't work. B, pinnacles of the iceberg. Again, the iceberg would not be daring its weight on the pinnacles or highest parts of itself. So no. C, surface of the sea. This makes sense. Viewing the iceberg from the ship, the iceberg would appear to be on the surface of the sea, and the fact that the sea is constantly moving would make it a shifting stage. So C is a good answer. D, world of human experience. That doesn't fit here at all. Eliminate D. E, deck of a ship. While the deck of a ship could be described metaphorically as a shifting stage, the iceberg isn't on the deck of the ship, and since we know that the iceberg is what is bearing its weight on the shifting stage, we know this can't be correct. So eliminate E, and the best answer is C, surface of the sea. Question number 5. The central metaphor in the second stanza compares the ocean scene to what? So we have a scene that a sailor would give his eyes for. We have the phrase, he who treads the boards, and treads the boards is an idiom for performing on stage. But even if you weren't familiar with that expression, you would see the curtain rising on finest ropes, and of course the shifting stage that we looked at in the last question. We also have the widths of the white peaks sparring with the sun, which could be comparing these flashing white peaks of the iceberg and the brightness of the sun to an exchange of witticisms. So let's look at our choices. A debate between sky and water. This might sound good if you just take the widths of the white peaks sparring with the sun. But the sparring of wits is between the iceberg and the sun rather than the sky and the water. And anyway, that answer doesn't take the whole stanza into account, so it's not a good answer. B, a dramatic production. This is much better. You have all of these elements of a dramatic production here. The stage, the curtain rising, a scene, treading the boards. B is a good answer. C, an assembly of uneasy strangers. This doesn't fit. There isn't any indication of anyone being uneasy or strangers, so eliminate C. D, a painting with many colors. The imagery isn't correct for this. The only color mentioned is white, and there aren't any references that could be connected to paintings, so no. E, a battle between sailors and the elements. The only thing that could be construed as a battle is the sparring between the white peaks and the sun, so even if you viewed that as a battle, it's not between the sailors and the elements. So cross out E, and the correct answer is, of course, B, a dramatic production. Question number 6. Which statement best defines the role of the second stanza? A, it shifts the focus of the poem to a new central figure. No, the central figure in the first stanza is the iceberg, and that's also the central figure in the second stanza, so A won't work. B, it recreates the fantasies of childhood. There's nothing here to indicate that this is a recreation of childhood fantasies, so since we can't support that answer from the text, we eliminate B. C, it reveals the speaker's private motivations. No, there's nothing to support this answer either. We don't get a hint of the speaker's private motivations from the stanza. The first line tells us that this is a scene that a sailor would give his eyes for, but even if you take that to be a revealing of motivations, it's not the speaker's private motivations, it's any sailor's motivation. So we really can't make this answer fit. Cross out C. D, it amplifies the regard expressed in the first stanza. This answer works. The first stanza is expressing praise or a high regard for the iceberg. The speaker would rather have the iceberg than the ship. And in the second stanza, the speaker goes even further. This is a scene that the sailor would give his eyes for. The ship is ignored in the presence of this attention-commanding iceberg. So the regard or admiration is amplified or increased in the second stanza. D is a very good response. E, it anticipates references to death and the grave in the third stanza. No, there isn't anything in the stanza that anticipates references to death, so E won't work. And the best answer is D, it amplifies the regard expressed in the first stanza.